you're going to look incredible in this one. Relax. Let go. Let yourself slip into something exquisite, something effortless, something unforgettable. And when you're ready, baby, dream of a new life.
My Best Friend's Girlfriend by Catherine Serafina. Chapter 6. I tightened the towel around myself, glancing at Garrett, who was awkwardly shifting his weight in the corner of the room. His curiosity was painfully obvious, but he was clearly trying to hold back, unsure of what to say, or if he should even say anything at all. "Garrett," I said firmly, though I kept my tone calm. "Can you give me a minute? Just step out, all right?" He blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Why? I mean, we've already—" "Just go," I interrupted, my patience wearing thin as I gave him a pointed look. All right, he said, holding his hands up in mock surrender. "I'm going. Jeez." He slipped out of the room, closing the door behind him. I exhaled a long, shaky breath, relieved to have a moment alone. Turning back to the mirror, I stared at my reflection again. It was strange how quickly I was starting to adjust to the sight of her. Me, Kesenya, the delicate features, the fiery red hair, the hourglass figure. It all felt alien and yet oddly familiar, like I'd stepped into a hyper-realistic dream. What stood out most, though, was my size. I stepped closer to the mirror, standing as tall as I could manage in my new form. At best, I was 5'1", if even that. The drastic difference in height made everything feel slightly off, from the way I moved to the way I saw the room around me. My hands, my arms, even my feet looked so small and delicate, moving with me but still feeling like they belonged to someone else. I turned slightly, studying the full picture. The towel hugged my narrow shoulders and wrapped snugly around my tiny frame, a far cry from the broad, muscular build I used to see staring back at me. The contrast was startling. My fingers brushed against the luxurious waves of my hair, thick and soft as it cascaded over my shoulders, the red locks shining in the dim light. Taking a deep breath, I untied the towel and let it fall away. The sight of myself naked again made my breath hitch, not from embarrassment this time, but from sheer disbelief. I grabbed a robe from the nearby dresser, quickly slipping it on. It was one of my usual robes, but now it hung loose and oversized, the hem dragging along the floor as if I were a child playing dress-up. The sash wrapped around my slim waist so far it could have been tied twice. Shaking my head, I tied it tightly and opened the door to the living room. Garrett was sitting on the couch, tapping his fingers on the armrest, clearly waiting for the all-clear. His head snapped up when he saw me, and for a moment, his eyes widened before he quickly masked his reaction with a casual smile. "Well," he said, gesturing vaguely at my robe-clad form, "you're, adjusting?" "Yeah," I replied, stepping into the room. "And since the gala isn't until tomorrow, I may as well make use of some of the clothes you bought." I moved toward the boxes scattered around the living room, rifling through them in search of something, anything to wear. Garrett's gaze followed me, his presence heavier than I liked. I could feel his eyes trailing over me, lingering a bit too long on the way the robe clung to my form. The realization made me tug the robe tighter around myself, but in my haste, I fumbled the sash. As I straightened, I caught the look on Garrett's face, his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide. My cheeks burned as I glanced down, realizing the robe had come loose, revealing far more than I intended. The robe had fallen open enough to leave my breasts completely exposed. "Garrett!" I shrieked, pulling the robe closed with trembling hands. "Stop staring!" He blinked as if coming out of a trance, and immediately held up his hands. "Whoa, sorry, I wasn't trying to—" "You were absolutely trying," I snapped, struggling to tie the oversized sash tightly enough to keep the robe in place. "God, you're such a pervert." He tried to suppress a grin, but it slipped through anyway. "I mean, can you blame me? Look at you, you're—" He paused, his expression shifting into something almost serious. "You're stunning." His words caught me off guard, momentarily disarming me. I tightened the robe around myself, glaring at him half-heartedly. "That's not the point. I'm not some thing for you to ogle." I know, he said quickly. Sorry, I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable. It's just wild, you know? Seeing you like this." I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Garrett, could you just bring the rest of the boxes into my room?" My tone was softer now, more tired than angry. He nodded, standing and grabbing a few boxes from the pile. "Sure thing. Honestly, I was wondering when you were going to dive into this wardrobe. You've got enough to open a boutique." I shot him a look as I picked up a couple of boxes myself. "Yeah, thanks to you." We carried the boxes into my room, setting them down by the bed. Garrett lingered for a moment, as if he wanted to say something more, but thought better of it. With a small nod, he turned to leave. As the door clicked shut behind him, I glanced at the boxes, then at myself in the mirror. Everything had changed. My body, my face, even my voice. Yet here I was, sorting through clothes like it was just another day. It was surreal. With all the boxes now stacked in my room, I stood amid the chaos, hands on my hips. Well, here goes nothing. I started rummaging through them, trying to ignore the nagging awareness of how surreal this all was. Clothes, lingerie, my clothes now. My lingerie. The thought made my stomach twist. The first thing I needed was underwear. There were so many options: lace, silk, thongs, high-waisted, sheer, tiny things that barely counted as fabric. Almost all of them screamed sexy, making me hesitate. After some digging, I found a pair I could tolerate for now: plain black boy shorts, simple, comfortable, nothing overly revealing. Next came the bras. There were dozens, each looking more complicated than the last, but I managed to find a matching black one that wasn't covered in lace or some frilly nonsense. Laying both items on the bed, I hesitated, staring at them. They were mine now. I swallowed and shook the thought away, shifting to the next task, finding actual clothes. I pulled out a pair of slim-fitting jeans, small but not unreasonably tight-looking, and tossed a plain white t-shirt on top. Simple, functional. If I ignored the reality of the situation, it almost felt normal. I turned toward Garrett, who was still hovering in the doorway, watching me like he was seeing some wild science experiment unfold. "All right, turn around for a second," I said, shooting him a look. He raised an eyebrow but obeyed, spinning on his heel. "Not looking," he said, holding his hands up like a sworn promise. I exhaled and let the oversized robe fall to the floor. The cool air ghosted over my skin, a new, unfamiliar sensation that sent a shiver through me. It traced along the curves I wasn't used to having, the swell of my breasts, the dip of my waist, the shape of my hips. Every inch of me felt hypersensitive, acutely aware of how different my body was now. I hesitated for a moment, then reached for the boy shorts, my fingers brushing the smooth fabric. Hooking my thumbs into the waistband, I stepped into them carefully, sliding them up over my newly sculpted legs. The sensation was startling. The way the material hugged my thighs, the way it clung to my skin, conforming perfectly to my shape. Then the fabric reached higher, covering what had once been me, except now there was nothing familiar left to cover. The moment the panties settled into place, I froze. Everything felt different. There was no familiar weight, no sense of what had been there before, just a strange, undeniable shift that my brain struggled to process. I inhaled sharply, instinctively adjusting the waistband, but the reality didn't change. It was gone. Completely. I inhaled sharply, my fingers instinctively adjusted the waistband, but the reality was unshakable. The absence was real. I was flat. I swallowed hard. "Focus, Peter." I turned quickly, grabbing the bra. It was a simple clasp-in-the-back design, but as I turned it over in my hands, I quickly realized just how not simple this was. "This is so weird," I muttered under my breath. Garrett's voice piped up from where he stood, still turned away. "What was that?" "Nothing," I snapped, turning my back to him just in case he was peeking, and stayed turned around. All right, he said, chuckling. I stared down at the delicate scrap of lace and satin in my hands, eyeing it with uncertainty. The bra seemed to mock me with its unfamiliarity, daring me to figure out its design. I had no frame of reference for something like this, never had to deal with hooks, straps, or anything like it. "Okay, how hard can this be?" I muttered. With a growing sense of trepidation, I wrapped the band around my torso, the cool fabric sending a faint shiver down my spine. The strap slipped awkwardly over my shoulders, and I immediately noticed how the weight on my chest shifted with even the smallest movement. The unfamiliar sensation threw off my coordination as I fumbled behind my back, trying to line up the hooks. "Jesus," I muttered under my breath, fingers clumsy as I struggled to fasten it. After a few frustrating attempts and more cursing than I cared to admit, I finally managed to snap the hooks into place. The broad tightened around me, lifting and supporting in a way that felt completely foreign. I adjusted the cups carefully, trying to make everything sit properly. The fabric molded against my skin, and for a moment, I just stood there, breathing slowly, trying to process the sensation. "Yeah," I murmured, "this is going to take some getting used to." Shaking my head, I reached for the jeans. They were slim-fitting, dark denim, simple enough. Stepping into the legs, I felt the rough fabric slide over my newly smooth skin. I shimmied them up, the fit hugging my thighs in a way that was entirely different from anything I'd worn before. The waistband met the apex of my hips, and I hesitated, feeling the pressure of the denim against my most intimate area. Even with the barrier of my panties, the sensation was different. Not unpleasant, but startling. I took a steadying breath and tugged the jeans the rest of the way up, fastening the button and zipper with a satisfying snap. The fit was snug, very snug. I turned to the side, my hands skimming over my hips and rear, marveling at how the jeans emphasized the curve of my ass. They clung like a second skin, shaping me in ways that were both surreal and, if I was being honest, kind of amazing. I tried not to think about it too much as I grabbed the white t-shirt and pulled it over my head. The moment the fabric slid over my chest, I realized my mistake. The cotton stretched tight, clinging to my body in ways I hadn't expected. The hem caught briefly on the swell of my breasts before I tugged it down, but there was no mistaking the way it fit. Snug, almost painted on. And then there were my nipples. I exhaled sharply, staring at my reflection. The thin fabric didn't leave much to the imagination, clinging to every curve and shifting with each breath. The fit was simple, casual, but on this body, even simple felt different. I ran my hands down my sides, smoothing the shirt over my waist. The image in the mirror was undeniable. Even in jeans and a t-shirt, I looked effortlessly feminine. Behind me, Garrett turned back around, his expression unreadable for a moment before a grin spread across his face. "Well, look at you, casual Kesenya." "Shut up," I muttered, though I couldn't stop myself from glancing at my reflection again. The snug fit, the way the clothes hugged my curves. It was foreign, yet somehow it worked. This was going to take some getting used to, but for now at least, I was dressed and ready to face whatever came next. I slumped onto the couch, letting out a heavy sigh as I sank into the cushions. The moment I hit the seat, I felt it. My chest bounced slightly even though I was wearing a bra. The sensation caught me off guard and I instinctively crossed my arms over myself, trying to ignore it. Garrett sat down next to me, unusually quiet for a change. We sat there in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the transformation settling over both of us. Eventually, Garrett broke the silence. "I'm starving. You hungry?" "Yeah," I admitted. "What are you in the mood for?" "I don't know. What about you?" I shrugged, fidgeting with the hem of my t-shirt. "We could order pizza, Chinese, maybe burgers?" Garrett shook his head. "Nah, we should go out." I shot him a sharp look. "Go out? Are you insane? I can't." He cut me off, raising a hand. "If you can't go to a regular restaurant as a woman, how are you going to manage tomorrow night at the gala? You need to get used to this, Kesenya." I groaned, slumping further into the couch. As much as I hated the idea, he was right. I couldn't just hide in my apartment until the gala and hope for the best. I had to get some practice being, well, her. "Fine," I muttered, "but you're paying." Garrett grinned triumphantly. "Deal." I stood up, grabbing my wallet and keys from the counter, only to realize I had no pockets to put them in. My jeans fit perfectly, too perfectly, but there was no sign of anywhere to stash anything. And even if they had pockets, they'd be too tight to even fit a credit card. I sighed in frustration. Great, now what? Garrett smirked. Looks like it's purse time. Of course it is, I muttered, rushing back to my bedroom. I rummaged through the box of purses, trying to find something simple and not over the top. Most of them were flashy or designer, but eventually I found a small, basic black crossbody bag that seemed tolerable. Slinging it over my shoulder, I stuffed my wallet and keys inside, feeling more ridiculous with every second. When I came back out, Garrett was waiting by the door. He opened it for me, gesturing with a cheeky grin. "After you, Kesenya." I froze for a second, the gesture catching me off guard. It wasn't like Garrett to hold doors open for me, or anyone really, but now that I looked like this, everything felt different. Reluctantly, I stepped through, mumbling, "This is so weird." Garrett laughed as he followed me out, locking the door behind us. "You'll get used to it, eventually." I wasn't so sure about that, but for now I had no choice but to embrace it. This was just the beginning, and the thought of stepping out into the world as Kesenya was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. We ended up at a tchotchke-style restaurant, a casual spot with quirky decor and a menu that offered a little bit of everything. It was the kind of place where you'd normally blend right in, but tonight felt anything but normal. From the moment we walked in, I noticed it. The way the hostess greeted us with a brighter-than-usual smile, the way her eyes lingered on me for just a second too long. Garrett, of course, didn't miss it either. He gave me a knowing smirk as we followed her to a booth. The stares didn't stop there. As we made our way through the restaurant, I caught several second glances from men, and even a couple of women. Their eyes lingered longer than I was used to, and it wasn't hard to guess why. The new Kesenya, me, was petite, curvy, and undeniably attractive. My long, wavy red hair caught the light every time I moved, and even in something as simple as jeans and a t-shirt, I couldn't help but draw attention. Sitting down in the booth was another adjustment. The table felt huge to my new, much smaller frame, like I was a kid trying to sit at the adult table. Garrett didn't seem to notice though, already scanning the menu like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Steak?" he announced when the waitress came over. "Medium rare." She turned to me with a friendly smile. "And for you?" "A burger, also medium rare," I said, keeping it simple. The waitress nodded, jotting it down. "Anything else? Drinks?" Garrett ordered a beer, and I asked for a soda, not entirely sure what kind of impression I'd make with alcohol right now. The waitress left, and I glanced around the restaurant again. "Relax," Garrett said, smirking at me. "You're doing fine." "Am I?" I asked, raising an eyebrow, "because I feel like everyone's staring." "That's because they are," he said with a grin. "Take it as a compliment." I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help noticing that the attention didn't feel hostile or judgmental. It was curiosity, maybe even attraction, and that made it even stranger. When the food arrived, I dug into my burger, trying to act normal. The flavors were just as good as I remembered, but my appetite wasn't what it used to be. I could barely eat half before feeling completely full, which was new and frustrating. Garrett, of course, demolished his steak, commenting on how good it was like nothing had changed. But what stood out the most was that nothing stood out. Nobody gave me a second glance because I wasn't fitting in. Nobody looked at me like I was out of place. I was just another woman at a restaurant, and that realization hit me harder than I expected. It was surreal, but it felt normal. Too normal. Despite everything, despite my new body, my new voice, and the fact that I now had breasts and a vagina, I was just enjoying dinner with my best friend. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a little more at ease. Maybe, just maybe, I could pull this off. "Be ready early tomorrow, okay? We've got a lot to do before the gala tomorrow night," Garrett reminded me. I nodded, exhausted but compliant. Yeah, I'll be ready." As he drove off, I unlocked my door and stepped inside, closing the chaos of the day behind me. The silence was a relief, though it didn't last long. I headed to my bedroom and was immediately confronted by the mess of boxes and piles of women's clothing scattered everywhere. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. This is my life now, huh? Still, I couldn't leave it like this, not with everything happening tomorrow. I started tidying up, sorting through a few of the boxes and trying to make sense of the mountain of fabric and accessories. As I lifted a piece of lace, a deep red bra, delicate and intricate, I couldn't help but pause. The fabric was soft and luxurious, and I found myself wondering how it would look on this new, undeniably sexy body of mine. Not someone else's body, I reminded myself. My body. I set the bra down and took a step back, glancing at the mirror. There I was, Kesenya, petite, curvy, with a face and figure that looked like it had stepped out of a magazine. It was surreal.
If tonight felt this natural, what was tomorrow going to feel like?
Still lost in the dream, aren't you? Don't worry, I've got plenty more where that came from. Sweet, sexy, transformative little dreams. All just a click away. And if you're craving the naughty versions, the ones too hot for YouTube, you know exactly where to find them. On my Patreon. I'll be waiting, gorgeous.